Which lens is right for you? Can a 4x zoom really compete with a 3x G Master zoom in terms of bokeh, sharpness, and overall image quality? Today I'll be comparing the Tamron 35-150 f2 to 2.8 T Master versus the Sony 24-70 G Master. Stick around because the results are as shocking as gas prices. Chapters in the description. However, if you skip around too much, you end up rewatching the video, and to find me again, subscribe. Let's get started with build and handling. These lenses don't feel all that different. They are big and beefy. We'll be going over their shared pros. Starting off with weather sealing, both lenses have this gasket and internal seals. These are premium lenses, expect no less. Moving on, there is a reprogrammable button for focus hold or other feature. This can be handy if you run out of custom buttons. The AF/MF switch is nice having a physical toggle. Again, this can free up a button or prevent the dreaded menu digging. Zoom lock, because with frequent use the seals will eventually get loose and reconstructive surgery costs a fortune. Wow. The hood lock is nice because in a crowded scenario you may bump it and it can come loose. However, I found that the GM hood lock did not work very well. It kept coming loose anyhow. Now let's talk about their exclusive pros. Starting off with the Tamron is the aperture control via focus ring. If that's your thing, have at it with Tamron lens utility. Pros for the 24-70 G Master is the felt lining hood. It feels really premium and really cuts down the light. Another pro for the Tamron is the focus pull button, infinity focus button, and multiple buttons in general. In darker scenarios, I can eventually find a button without getting my hand slapped away. Lastly, with the GM is the full metal body. It doesn't use plastic, it uses metal and gives an overall more rugged feel. Because of the hood issue and lots of control, I'm going to give this category to the Tamron. Next up, how does the Tamron hold up in terms of autofocus? Let's have a look. During real-time playback, it was hard to tell the difference between the two. However, if I slow it down, you can see a slight lag with both of these lenses. It's not by very much, and in practice, probably a non-issue. I'll start off by saying this is in a very dark scenario and it may not represent real world since I live on the internet. The GM records 30 frames per second on the Alpha 1, 15 for the Tamron. However, the tracking is good up until this point, right about here. The GM was able to maintain focus for a longer amount of time. Winner in this category is the Sony. Can the T Master really keep up with sharpness? Well, I named it T Master for a reason. Let's have a look. At 35mm 100%, the Tamron is noticeably sharper than the 24-70 GM. Towards the edge, and the Tamron holds the lead. You can see the gymnasium right here is just much clearer. Going towards the far edges, and the Tamron is a little bit sharper. Keep in mind, the Tamron is wide open at f2. Now that both are at f2.8, the Tamron increases the lead even more. Everything is very sharp. At f4, the GM catches up. However, the Tamron still leads by a little bit. At f5.6, they are neck and neck. Let's double check the center. And yes, they are neck and neck at this point. At f8, they are fairly comparable at 100%. Far edges, it looks like the Tamron has degraded a tiny bit at f8. At 5.6, they are closer, so the Tamron did indeed get weaker at f8. However, 5.6, both lenses they're really close. I would give a hair edge to the GM. Moving to 50mm in the center, the Tamron has a slight lead. Everything just looks more fine detailed, especially in this fencing area. Going towards the edge, the Tamron holds more detail, especially with the lettering. Far edge, once again, the Tamron is better. It's clearly better at this far edge, and it is wide open at f2.2. At f2.8, the Tamron is much sharper, clearly outclassing the GM. At f4, the GM improves, however, it's still behind. Center is right up there. They are neck and neck. At 5.6, they are comparable. At the edge, they are also comparable here. Far corners, slight lead to the Tamron, probably not very noticeable. At f8, they are comparable at the edge. Here's the mid frame. The lettering is nice and clear on both samples. Back to the center, comparable. At 70 millimeters, the Tamron is clearly sharper. There's much more detail in these pins and needles. Again, this text right here is just, they're not in the same league at this point. And at the far edges, the Tamron has much better detail. And it should be noted that the Tamron performs best at 85, and 70 is close enough. Stopping down to f4, see if the GM even catches up. It doesn't. f5.6, and the GM still lags behind. The Tamron is wide open at f2.5, and it still lags behind once again. The GM is at f8, and the Tamron is wide open. Let's just check the other side. Here we are checking the other side just to make sure it's not a tilted lens. And as you can see, the Tamron is still wide open and it's still clearly sharper. Both sides, the Tamron performs better wide open at f2.5 compared to the GM at f8. The T-Master is technically a variable aperture zoom. How much bokeh difference is there? Let's have a look. Both 35mm wide open, and on closer inspection, can you tell the difference? Time for the reveal. Being f2, the Tamron has an advantage of a larger aperture, and the bokeh does look cleaner. With the full body view, I can see a bit of nervousness for the GM. Can you tell which is which? Here it is. At this distance, there's a lower amount of blurring ability, so it won't matter as much. At 70mm, the GM is at f2.8, the Tamron is at f2.5. Can you tell the difference? Let's have a closer look. Time for the reveal. To my eyes, the Tamron does look significantly better. Moving on to full body, and we'll get a little bit closer. Time for the reveal. Larger aperture, smoother bokeh. It's really hard to ignore the Tamron and my third leg. Winner in this category is the Tamron. Next up is CA and LoCA. We'll take a look at lateral and bokeh chromatic aberration. At 35mm, the LoCA is there. It's slightly worse on the GM. It's nothing to be concerned about. 70mm, LoCA is much more prevalent with both lenses. You can see greens and purples. They are fairly comparable. The GM is quite a bit worse when it comes to chromatic aberration. As you can see, Tamron's just a little bit cleaner. Well, it's a lot cleaner. And this is a torture test. I mean, in real practice, it's probably not too big of an issue. Here's the telephoto end, and the Tamron is a lot cleaner. So overall in the category, I would give the Tamron a slight advantage. Winner in this category. How dramatic does this lens behave when light hits the front element? Let's have a look at flare and Sunstars. Can you tell which is which? These were taken a few minutes apart, and due to the sun setting, there are minor differences. However, I can't say there's a really big difference between flaring performance. Both look to do fine as far as I can tell. At this particular focal length, I think the G Master does better. And the Tamron has a very circular blob right in the middle that you can see. I didn't see that at other focal lengths. As mentioned in the review, the Tamron gets stronger as it goes longer, something us Asians don't experience. And it gets to a certain point that there's just a slight difference in flaring variation. As you can see, the Sony has a different type of flare than the Tamron. Moving on, I think both lenses have really nice Sunstars. The rays are neatly cut, the effect is very prominent. And overall, I'm going to give a slight edge to the GM. The rays are just a little bit sharper, and the overall flaring is just a little better. Winner in this category, the Sony G Master. Video folks, this is for you, video features. Neither lenses are truly parfocal. However, it should be noted that the Tamron drifts less than the Sony. And when it comes to indoor parfocal performance, you can see up next that the Tamron does have that performance edge. It can be parfocal at closer distances. At 35mm, both lenses suffer from focus breathing, and at 50mm, you can see that they clean up nicely. When it comes to 70mm, both lenses perform very well in this regard. With the Tamron having the edge in parfocal performance, I give overall video features to the Tamron.
Next up is a highly debatable topic, size with respect to range.
Let's get some key specs out of the way. The weight is noticeable and significant. The filter sizes are the same. The length, the Tamron is 3/4 of an inch longer. Some bags are designed to fit exactly the GM and a body attached. However, that added length of the Tamron means that it won't fit anymore. You'll be forced to use a bag that's in the class of the 70-200s, but then again, this lens sort of covers that range as well. The range of the GM starts at a bona fide wide angle to a short telephoto. It's a great range that's been used for a long time. The 35-150 can be used indoors and is more optimized for larger spaces, great for larger venues or outdoors. 150mm is quite a bit of reach. Because the 35-150 covers so much overlapping range of the 24-70 and 70-200 without being obnoxiously big, it's smaller than most historic 70-200 f2.8s. I do think it is the winner in the size and range category because it is a 4x zoom after all, and it starts at f2, ends at f2.8.
Let's talk about value. The 35-150 comes in at $18.99 and covers most of the range of a 28-75 and 70-180. Trading out some focal range for convenience of a single lens, you're also gaining a wider aperture on the wide end, and you're also getting multifunction controls that are not available on any other lens on the market. Going by these factors, I think the price is fair, and I just rationalized paying $1,900 for a third-party lens. With the G Master, you're paying for maximum compatibility and autofocus performance. You also have this X factor where when the body upgrades, you might get additional features like focus breathing compensation, parfocal performance, possibly even higher frame rates. These things can happen in the Sony world. First party lenses generally lose out on cost. However, it doesn't mean the value isn't there. It is. At the end of the day, you have to pick a winner for value, and it has to be the Tamron. The optics far exceeded my expectations, and that is timeless. Final thoughts, the 24-70 is a tried and true focal range. It works great in close quarters. The 35-150 works better in spacious areas or if you're trying to social distance or spy on people. The highly popular range of 35-85-135 is covered in one lens, the Tamron 35-150, and it does so with a maximum aperture of f2 and minimum of f2.8. That makes this lens really unique. However, you need 24. Backing up to 24 is a lot harder than cropping to 35. If you're a 35 prime shooter, chances are you don't have 24 anyhow, and this might work out for you. If you intend to pair lenses, especially with an ultra wide, the 35-150 makes a lot more sense. There's less wasted overlapping focal lengths and it's easier for a 2-lens setup. So let me know in the comments below, if you were starting from scratch, which lens would you get and why? Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one. Take care.